Good morning, guys. Welcome back to FECAM's unique histology review series. This video is brought to you by the academic and editorial boards of the Federation of Catholic Medical and Dental Students, FECAM's unique chapter. My name is Zuguchukwu De Victor, a 500 level medical student of the College of Medicine, University of Nigeria Teaching Hospital, Itukwuozola, Enugu State. Please do not forget to like our videos and subscribe to our channel, as this will encourage us to make more educational content like this. Thank you. So today we'll be looking at the histology of the urinary system. And the structures under the urinary system includes the kidney, the ureter, the bladder, the urinary bladder, the urethra, and the penis. So let's start with the kidney. So let's read the side notes. The reasons for identifying the kidneys is the presence of renal corpuscles or medullary rays. Depending on what you're seeing, the development of the kidneys from the metanephric blastema and the ureteric board. Then the functions of the kidneys: formation of urine, ultrafiltration of plasma, elimination of toxins. The blood supply of the kidney is right and left renal arteries from the abdominal aorta. The weight is about 150 grams. The dimension is 12 by 6 by 3. The pathologies: chronic kidney disease, kidney stones, glomerulonephritis. Then the relations, the diaphragm, the psoas major, etc. Then, how do you identify the slide of the kidney on histology? From the reasons we give: presence of renal corpuscles and medullary rays. So let's zoom in. Okay. These secular structures represent the renal corpuscles. They look like stones suspended within the slide. And look at a space, a kind of circular space that surrounds it. That's the Bowman space. That represents the Bowman space. So this circular structure here represents the tuft of capillaries, which is the glomerulus. So the glomerulus and the Bowman capsule forms what is called the renal corpuscle. So these circular structures, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one too. So remember that the kidney is divided into the cortex and the medulla. So the cortex contains more of the renal corpuscles. Also, you can also find the convoluted tubules, the proximal and distal convoluted tubules in the renal corpuscles, in the cortex, sorry. So you can find numerous proximal convoluted tubules and then a few distal convoluted tubules. So you might not really be able to appreciate the tubules in this image, but then the key to identifying the tubules is that the proximal convoluted tubules stains better than the distal convoluted tubules. Stains better. So the proximal convoluted tubules contains the simple cuboidal epithelium and then some tuft of brush border, layer of brush border, so the lumen might seem indistinct. While that of the distal convoluted tubules, the lumen is majorly clear and the cells lining them is the simple cuboidal epithelium, but no brush border. Hence, the lumen is a bit clearer and distinct than the proximal convoluted tubules. Then, in the medulla contains more of the loop of Henle and the collecting duct, and they also stain poorly. They don't stain as much as the proximal convoluted tubules. And then some of these can extend into the cortex, forming the medullary rays. So these medullary rays that we talked about here presents the collecting duct and some parts of loop of Henle that form parallel rays that extends into the cortex. So that's it. Let's look at other slides. So this is another slide of the kidney. Let's try and zoom in. You can appreciate some of the structures. This is the renal corpuscle, so it looks like stones with a small space, a small rim of space surrounding it. So look at them here. They are numerous. This one too. This one. This one. And then you can also appreciate some of the ducts, though they are not really too clear here. But then the most important thing to identify here is the renal corpuscles. Now look at this one as well. The renal corpuscle, Then you can also appreciate some parallel running structures. So this one represents the medullary rays. That's an extension of the collecting duct and the loop of Henle within the cortex. So this is also the cortex of the kidney. Use the medullary rays. So the same thing here. You can appreciate some stone-like structures like this, this, this also. So they are numerous here, not too distinct, but you can still appreciate the basic features of the renal corpuscles suspended within numerous tubules. So this is how the slide of the kidney looks like. The cortex. Now, the medulla contains more of the collecting tubes and the loop of Henle. So these parallel, you cannot see the renal corpuscles here because you're in the renal medulla. So you see more of the loop of Henle and the collecting duct. Look at how the fibers are running parallel. Most of them are running parallel. See that? And then some of the tubes are cut in transverse section. So that's it for the kidney. Then the next one is the ureters. Let's read the side notes. The reasons for identifying the ureters is the presence of stellate lumen and then transitional epithelium. The transitional epithelium is also called the urothelium. So the development is from the ureteric board. The function of the ureters is the flow of urine from the kidney to the urinary bladder. The length is 25 cm. The look-alike is the urethra, the oviduct. Pathologies includes the ureteric stones, ureteritis. Anatomic relations include the pelvic brim and the psoas major. So the ureter is like a muscular tube that conducts urine from the kidney to the urinary bladder. So the ureter has three major layers of importance. The first layer is the mucosa, the next layer is the muscular layer, and the next layer is the the adventitia. So these three layers will help you to identify the slide of the ureter. So this represents the epithelium of the ureter and the transitional epithelium of the urothelium. So refer back to earlier videos on epithelium to further understand how the transitional epithelium looks like. You can appreciate the stellate lumen, which is as a result of the longitudinal folds of the mucosa. Now, this layer immediately deep to the epithelium is actually the lamina propria of the mucosa. So it's not really the submucosa, because in the video for the esophagus and stomach, we compared the slides of the esophagus and the ureters, and we used this area which looked like the submucosa to differentiate the esophagus and the ureters. So this layer is not actually the submucosa. The ureters does not have a clearly defined submucosa. But then we used this area to kind of differentiate between the esophagus and the ureters when you are looking at it. But in the real sense, this is the lamina propria. And this is also a layer of loose connective tissue, just like the submucosa. So it's also a layer of connective tissue. But one thing with lamina propria is histologically, it is also classified as a part of the mucosa. So you should take note of that. The comparison we made in the video for esophagus and stomach is to enable you understand it when you see it visually. But in the real sense, the ureter does not really contain distinct submucosa. So this represents the lamina propria. So it actually looks like the submucosa, but it is not a real submucosa. I hope you get this explanation. Now, the next layer following it is the muscle layer. And the muscle layer here that you're looking at is the longitudinal muscle layer. That's the inner one. And then the outer one, which is the circular muscle layer. So it's like an inverse of what you find in the gastrointestinal system, where you find an inner circular layer and an outer longitudinal layer. Here we have an inner longitudinal layer and an outer circular layer. And then the next layer is the adventitia. And this represents a layer of connective tissue that surrounds the muscular layer. And it contains fat cells, numerous fat cells. So one of the things that will help you to differentiate the ureters from the esophagus in some images, because sometimes they can look alike, is that the adventitia of the ureter is very much numerous. It's numerous. So look at this. Most times you'll see it to help you, because other layers might not really contain much difference. But then for the ureters, most times you see the extra connective tissue layer that covers the muscular layer of the ureters. So the same thing here. You can see the transitional epithelium or the urothelium, and then the lamina propria, which looks like the submucosa, but is not a real submucosa. So it does not contain glands. See that? It doesn't contain glands. Then the muscle layer, and then the extra connective tissue layer. Most times in the slides of the ureters, you'll be able to see it. Same thing here, the transitional epithelium, and then the area that looks like the submucosa, but it's not a real submucosa. It doesn't contain glands. Then the muscle layer, and then the extra connective tissue layer. You always see it in the slide of the ureter. So you might not really appreciate the fat cells here. So look at the same thing here. The mucosa, and then the area that looks like the submucosa, but it's not a real submucosa. It's actually the lamina propria, the muscle layer, and then the extra connective tissue layer. Notice that the extra connective tissue layer doesn't stain as much as the muscle layer because you do not have the dense packing of cells in connective tissue as much as you have it in the muscle layer. So the same thing here. And then this extra connective tissue layer, which helps us to differentiate the ureters visually from the esophagus. They are histologically different. So visually, they might seem confusing and the areas might appear confusing, but I hope this explanation will clarify that. So that's it for the ureters. Now the next one is the urinary bladder. So the side note, the reasons for identifying the urinary bladder includes the transitional epithelium, the detrusor muscles scattered in different directions, then the development of the urinary bladder is from the vesical urethral canal, which is endodem, and mesonephric duct, which is the mesoderm for the trigone. So the urinary bladder develops from two parts, endodem and the mesoderm. So the function is the storage of urine. The capacity is about between 400 to 800 mils, so around 500 or 600 mils average. So the urinary bladder is one of the organs of the urinary system. So the epithelium here is also transitional, but one of the things that will help you differentiate between, one of the things that will help you identify the urinary bladder is the presence of this muscle layer, which is scattered and running in different directions. So the muscle layer actually contains an inner longitudinal muscle layer and an outer longitudinal muscle layer, and in between them you have a layer of circular muscle and also oblique muscle layer. So when it is cut on histology sessions, you see them as a kind of running in different directions, and they are actually very numerous. So you have the mucosa, the lamina propria. It kind of looks like the submucosa visually, but it's not the submucosa. So visually, some people might mistake it as the submucosa, but then it's not a real submucosa, just like in the ureter. So the term submucosa is just a kind of visual differentiation to help you identify the slide on the image, but it doesn't contain a real submucosa. Submucosal layer is not distinct. So this is the muscle layer. Notice the way they run in different directions. Same thing here. You can see the epithelium, transitional epithelium, and then the muscle layer. It's not well arranged, running in different directions. Same thing here. This is the muscle layer. This is the epithelium. This is the lamina propria. And then these muscle layers. Same thing here. Here they are comparing the urinary bladder on the left and the gallbladder. So then the notes here is that we should compare the urothelium on the left and the tall, beautiful columnar epithelium of the gallbladder on the right. We've talked about the gallbladder previously. The detrusor muscles on the left are scattered in different directions. So look at the detrusor muscles scattered in different directions. So this is how you identify the urinary bladder, while the gallbladder doesn't have a distinct muscular layer. The coat of the gallbladder is the fibromuscular coat. So that's it for the urinary bladder. So you should also always look out for the detrusor layer as well to help you identify the urinary bladder on histology. Also remember to name the urinary bladder in full, same as the gallbladder. Don't just end at bladder as the name or the ID. Now the next one is the urethra. The urethra is what conducts urine from the urinary bladder to the outside world. So it's not actually exactly the same in the male and in the female. So for the penile urethra in the males, the lumen appears a kind of roughly stellate, and then it is flattened horizontally. So actually, the urethra contains a mucosa, that's an epithelium, and then a submucosa, and then an external mucosal layer, not too distinct. One thing that will help you to identify the urethra on histology is the flattened nature of the lumen. So it appears like a lizard, kind of like this. See that? It appears flattened horizontally. Then the pathologies involving the urethra includes the urethral stricture, urethritis. Now look at this one too, flattened horizontally. But then it is suspended within an erectile tissue of the penis. Same thing here. Suspended within the erectile tissue of the penis. So the urethra in penis. So for this, if you are presented with an image like this, you can appreciate the two erectile tissues, the corpora cavernosa and the corpus spongiosum, and then you can see the horizontally flattened lumen of the urethra. So if you are presented with a slide like this, your identification will be the penis, the slide of the penis. But then if the urethra is pointed to, it is pointed at in the image, your identification will be the urethra in the penis. So you should note this. So in this case, you call this one the urethra in the penis or the penile urethra because you can't appreciate the presence of the two corpora cavernosa and the corpus spongiosum. Same thing here. You can only appreciate the urethra here, and only the corpora spongiosum. So you can't really see the three erectile tissues. So the same thing here. So here you can appreciate the erectile tissues, the full erectile tissue. So here your identification will be the penis. While if the arrow is pointed at the urethra, your ID will be the urethra in the penis. So the penis contains erectile tissue. That's one of the major things that you use to identify it, and it has this kind of monkey face appearance. So monkey face appearance. So the corpora cavernosa looks like the eyes of the monkey, and then the mouth, the urethra, and the corpus spongiosum. So the pathologies of the penis includes penile fracture, etc. So note the corpus spongiosum and cavernosa in the slide of the penis. So see the same thing here. Here you can appreciate the erectile tissues, the full erectile tissues. So here you name it the slide of the penis and not just the urethra. Even though the urethra is present, but if the urethra is pointed out, it will now be the urethra in the penis. So look at this also. The full erectile tissue is here. And you can see the corpora cavernosa and the corpus spongiosum. So the monkey face slide, it's actually very easy to identify. So whenever you see this, your mind should go to the penis. So this is where we stop for this lecture. I hope you learned a lot from it. We'll meet again in the next video. Drop your questions and comments in the comment section. Thanks for watching.